everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about books that I read in September. Interestingly, for the longest time, throughout the entire month of September, I'm like, I am going through such a big slump. I didn't read anything. Won't be any point in me doing a wrap up, but I read more than I thought I did. Granted, I didn't really start reading until it was the middle of September, but we got this. In the beginning of the month, I did participate in Zodiac-a-thon, and so some of these books are from that reading vlog. First thing that I read in September is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and illustrated by Faith Erin Hicks. This is a graphic novel where these two best friends are seasonal workers at like this, I don't know, pumpkin patch sort of place. That's not just a pumpkin patch, like there's rides, there's food. It's definitely one of those seasonal places that they go all out to make all the possible money that they can before they close for the season. And these best friends, Deja and Josiah, work at the same location every year, at least the same location in the park. Josiah has actually had this crush on this girl that's worked in the fudge shop every year that he's worked there, and this is his last year and Deja's last year before they go off to college and they won't be able to come back. And so Deja is like, you know what, this is your last year, you gotta take your shot. So she makes him go talk to this girl at the fudge stand, and she's gone. She's been reassigned someplace else. So Deja forces Josiah to try to find this girl, and this entire story is them running into different shenanigans trying to find this girl so Josiah can have that rom-com moment. I liked the overall art style of this, and I liked how there were moments to where no dialogue was happening, but I completely understood like the moments, like what was happening in that moment, and certain moments like made me laugh out loud. I felt like this was really well done. And I really liked the build-up of trying to find this girl, but when we finally find the girl at the end of the book, I feel like that element of the story was given the bum's rush. Like it wasn't given the same love and care as the rest of the graphic novel was. Not to say that I didn't like the ending. I actually really liked the ending. I felt like that was a better ending than what it could have been. But I would prefer to have seen like the same love and care taken into the ending, like given like how do I want to word this? It's basically the pacing. The pacing was just really rushed at the end. And because of that, I did rate this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I enjoyed it. I loved how it made me laugh out loud. I loved how it went, oh, at certain points. It was good. Just the ending wasn't held to the same standard as everything else. The next book I read in September is We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. And this book was a lot. Our main character, Henry, is dealing with the loss of his boyfriend. His boyfriend committed suicide before the books even started, so we're experiencing Henry through his grief. And he also has these episodes where he is taken by aliens, shown that the world is going to end, and all he needs to do is press this button and it will save the world. And when he doesn't press it, the aliens send him back. So the story is Henry trying to come to terms, like, is the world worth saving? Because not only is he dealing with the grief of his lost boyfriend, but he is being bullied relentlessly. And even though like a lot of bad stuff is happening to him, he does meet someone new, and he does go through like the beginning stages of a relationship with a new person. But even though he's going through this new relationship and this beginning stages, you know, budding happy relationship, he still hates himself and he still hates the world around him. So even with this one good thing happening, he doesn't know if it's worth saving the world for. I found this overall story to be very believable. Like, I believed Henry as a character, but the dark elements of the story at times got a little bit much for me. Like, at one point, Henry is actually assaulted by someone he was seeing. Like, while he is dealing with the grief of his boyfriend, he starts sleeping with his bully. And so his bully is willing to show all this love behind closed doors, but out in public, he like verbally abuses him, and at one point he even like physically assaults him. Like, hey dude, it was just a prank. No, that's gaslighting, jerk. But I really appreciated like the character development that Henry went through, because at first he kept giving excuses to this dude, and he eventually breaks from that. So I really appreciated that that occurred in the story. But again, this ending was also not something that I loved. I wish the ending was more definite and not so open to interpretation, I guess is how I want to say it. This was another one that I rated 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book that I read in September is Romanov by Nadine Brandes, or Brands. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm going to assume it's Brandes, or Brandes. No, Brandes. Just ignore me, please. And this is a fantasy retelling of Anastasia and the last Tsar of Russia. The overall concept is really cool, but unfortunately it did not deliver. Like, it starts with Anastasia being exiled with her family after the Bolsheviks takes over Russia. And she doesn't know what's going to happen to her and her family. And the fantasy element is there's this type of magic that Rasputin was able to do. And this magic from Rasputin was what was keeping her brother Nicholas in better health, because he has hemophilia. Is that how you pronounce it? Basically, he has a blood disorder that his blood doesn't clot. And so if he falls, he gets really hurt. And now that Rasputin isn't around, he was, killed by the Bolsheviks, Anastasia now has to find a way to help her brother using this magic. But this magic has now been banned. And anyone who can do this magic is being rounded up by the Bolsheviks. Obviously, the history part of this book was given some, how do I want to word it? What's the word? Wow. Literary privilege. Like, things were, of course, changed, and it didn't strictly stay in regards of how things happened in history. But honestly, I didn't necessarily care about that. I didn't like Anastasia's attitude by a lot of things. Her attitude was basically, the mean Bolsheviks are bothering my family. My papa didn't do anything wrong. He loved his country. He loved his people, and she kept repeating that so often. He couldn't have done anything. He loved them. He loved them. He loved them. Okay, he must have done something to lose his title of Tsar. Obviously, it was explained how her family lost power because their relationship with Rasputin, and of course that's what happened in history. But I felt it was so weak. I found a lot of the motives in this book to be on the weaker side. And I didn't like how the magic part of the story wasn't really explained. And they explained that by saying Rasputin didn't want to share with Anastasia his ability to do this magic or how he was able to do it. But again, I thought that was weak. I would love to have seen more world building in regards to this magic. So overall, a very cool concept. It just did not deliver, so I rated this 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. There was also a lot of emphasis on blood. And at times when she got very dramatic, which of course she did, she's a princess, it's like, and then his blood dripped out of his body and I can just hear it, Romanov, Romanov, Romanov. And the 5th time this happened in the book, I'm like, I get it, you're Romanov. The next book that I read in September is To Be Honest by Maggie Ann Martin. This is a contemporary book. Our main character is Savannah, and she is a plus-size person. Her mom goes through The Biggest Loser type of show and loses a bunch of weight. And this has caused some contention in the house, because we all know that these type of shows are not good for the contestants, and it's not good in general. So with all the baggage that the mom went through on the show to lose all the weight, the mom brings it home and makes Savannah the mom says a lot of fat phobic stuff. And I loved how Savannah really stuck up for herself. Of course, she deals with self-esteem issues, but who doesn't? And there's this romance element happening in the story. I like the family dynamic. Savannah is in high school and she's going through her senior year. She's part of this newspaper and she's investigating a story about one of the coaches on campus. Her sister's off at college and it's her best friend basically, and so she's dealing with the loss of her best friend, at least in her mind. So there's a lot of cool different dynamics happening in the book. I like how a lot of representation and different representation was handled in the book. I loved how, yes, there's an eating disorder in the book. The mom eventually does get committed for an eating disorder. So for those who are listening or counting, the trigger warnings for this book is challenge, fat phobia, and eating disorders. And I appreciated with the eating disorder how it was an older person that was portrayed with an eating disorder. A lot of times in these books, it's a younger person, a younger woman. And I like how it showed that no, anybody can have an eating disorder. So I liked the overall concept of the story, but even though I liked the overall concept of the story, a lot of the elements that was occurring in the story was just incredibly predictable. I rated this 3 out of 5 stars, and the only reason I rated it higher than I originally was going to is because I found her to be such a believable person that when she would say something or do something that frustrated me, I actually vocally responded to her. So I found her to be incredibly believable. And the last book that I read in September is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. It's the first book in a series, and it took me forever to read this, and it's because it didn't really keep me engaged. Basically, a girl has these powers that comes from the gods, and she's being hunted by another country. Like, these two countries are at war with each other. One country has blood magic, which in the girl's eyes is heresy. It's bad magic. Magic from the gods is what is good magic and correct magic. And so she's basically the chosen one in this story, and her goal is to stop the war and stop this bad magic that's happening. Of course, there's this romance element happening between her and one of the blood mages, and her overall goal is to try to assassinate the king from the other country. There was nothing wrong with the story, but for some reason it just didn't keep me engaged. Like, I couldn't necessarily root for her. I couldn't necessarily root for the blood mage. I couldn't necessarily root for the king that was hunting this girl. Just an overall meh experience with these characters. I did appreciate when she was starting to deal with her own doubt in regards to her faith. As someone who's gone through and still goes through elements of doubt and in faith, I was able to relate to that. So in my mind, overall, that was like the best part of the story. I also couldn't root for this romance that was happening. I guess I didn't care. And certain elements of the plot also left me very confused. There really, in my opinion, wasn't a whole lot of world building, and in a way, a lot of world building wasn't necessarily, I guess, necessary. Didn't mean to word it like that, but so it made sense to why I was dropped in this world and asked to just keep up. But I would love to have seen, I don't know, more motives behind at least the gods, because you hear the gods speak through the girl, and I would love to have seen more scenes with the gods, like get to know the gods more. I feel like that they just stayed behind closed doors, and obviously for a reason. It's meant so this girl can question her faith about these gods, but I was more interested in the gods and I wasn't given any information on them. So the idea was cool. It was just I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. So I rated this 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. And that's it. That's everything that I read for September. Again, I thought I didn't read a whole lot, but actually I read 5 books in September, which is a pretty decent amount. I wanted to actually participate in Space Opera September, but with how things are going in my personal life right now, I just didn't have the time for it. So maybe next year. Hopefully next year. Let me know your thoughts down below on some of these books. Maybe I just missed something, especially with Wicked Saints. Maybe I just missed something. Feel free to talk about it down below. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I guess it's that's all for now. Bye, guys.